the Chevrolet small block V8, the engine that saved an auto giant and conquered America. But beneath the facade of its brilliant triumph lay an unbearable truth. This engineering masterpiece carried the seeds of its own destruction. Created in a frantic 15 weeks, it instantly dominated NASCAR, becoming an icon of speed. However, mechanics whispered of an oil-starved assassin, predicting the engine would last merely 30,000 miles. Expanding pistons literally scraped the life out of the cylinders. Triumph turned into a curse. This is a saga about the paradox of innovation. What truly defines greatness? A daring leap towards it, or the painstaking work of correcting the deadliest of mistakes? The early 1950s. A time of untamed freedom, gasoline-fueled intoxication, and the American dream, cast in chrome. But behind this facade of ostentatious prosperity, a drama was brewing, ready to swallow one of Detroit's titans at any moment. For Chevrolet, truly dark days were dawning. Competitors, like predators sensing prey, were closing in from all sides. Ford was already boasting its powerful Y-block V8, and Studebaker was keeping pace, offering its own 8-cylinder engines. And Chevrolet? It still clung to the pride of its past, the good old, but hopelessly outdated, 6-cylinder stove-bolt engine. Reliable, no doubt, but in a world where the speed and prestige of a V8 were becoming a new cult, the stove-bolt was a dinosaur. The market sent a clear signal about what buyers wanted. In 1950, only 26% of car enthusiasts dreamed of a V8 under the hood. But by 1954, that figure had skyrocketed to an alarming 50%. Half of all potential customers demanded 8 cylinders, and Chevrolet could offer nothing but its archaic 6. This wasn't just a loss of market share. It was an existential threat. The choice was stark: adapt or disappear. Tension hung in the halls of General Motors, impossible to ignore. The GM manager at the time, Thomas Keating, watched in agony as his creation lost ground. In 1952, a stark memo flowed from his pen, its words echoing through the corridors of power. "We have become too 6-cylinder minded." It was an admission of disaster, but also a call to action. Thus, the billion-dollar gamble was born. Chevrolet had to develop an entirely new V8 from scratch. This was not just an engineering task, it was a high-stakes bet on the company's survival. The stakes were incredibly high. Either the new engine would pull Chevrolet from the abyss, or it would be the final nail in its coffin. In May of 1952, a man destined to change history stepped onto the bridge of this sinking ship. His name was Edward N. Cole. He took charge of this desperate project, fully aware of the monumental and seemingly impossible task ahead. Cole's team faced immense pressure, insane deadlines, and the need to create a miracle. It was then, in the dusty drafting rooms of Flint, Michigan, that the foundation was laid for an engineering masterpiece that was meant to be a salvation, or a curse. Edward Cole, the man who took the helm of the sinking ship Chevrolet, wasted no time. He knew that traditional paths were dead ends. His predecessor, Edward Kelly, had tried to adapt an existing, albeit downsized V8 from Cadillac. Cole dismissed the idea out of hand. Instead, he demanded a fresh start, a clean slate, a blank canvas. And so, the insane gamble was made. Just 15 weeks. That was the time allotted to a team of 2,900 engineers in Flint, Michigan, to achieve the impossible, a working prototype of a brand new V8 engine. This wasn't just a tight deadline. It was a frantic sprint, an engineering blitzkrieg where every day, every pencil stroke, decided the company's fate. The heart of this innovation beat within the block itself. John Dolza, A brilliant engineer from GM, in collaboration with Cole, revolutionized the concept of casting. They mastered a thin wall casting method using revolutionary green sand cores, which allowed the block to be cast upside down. The result? Unprecedentedly lightweight yet strong cylinder walls, a mere 5/32 of an inch thick. This enabled incredible compactness. The distance between cylinder centers was reduced to a stunning 4.4 inches, and the overall block length was less than 22 inches, 21.75 to be exact. What they had was not just a lump of iron, but a sleek, compact sculpture embodying rigidity and weight savings. But compactness was just the foundation. This engine was built for speed. And here, the over-square design took center stage. The cylinder bore was larger than the piston stroke. What did this provide? The ability to reach much higher RPMs without tearing itself apart, minimizing wear and unleashing pure, untamed power. Every detail of the small block was subject to the philosophy of lightness and performance. Hollow push rods that doubled as oil channels to the valve train, eliminating extra tubes. Stamped metal rocker arms, a concept developed by Clayton Leach at Pontiac back in 1947, lightened the valve train to the extreme, allowing the engine to rev up to a dizzying 5,500 to 6,000 RPM. The integrated intake manifold also served as the valley cover, saving weight and simplifying the design. Not an ounce of extra metal, not a single unnecessary part. Inside this engineering marvel lay wedge-shaped combustion chambers. They didn't just hold fuel, they turned it into pure energy. A large quench area actively fought detonation, creating powerful turbulence that made the air-fuel mixture burn with unprecedented efficiency. The spark plugs were placed at the very heart of this miniature explosion, ensuring instant and uniform ignition. Even the smallest detail, a protective lip on the cylinder head, was designed to prevent a single drop of oil from reaching the plug. The engine was not only compact and light, but also incredibly strong. A crankshaft made of forged steel, not cheaper cast iron, guaranteed durability even under extreme loads. And the innovative poised power engine mounting system literally suspended the powertrain, minimizing the transfer of vibrations and torque to the frame and body. Everything about this engine, from its 3-ring aluminum pistons to its interchangeable cylinder heads, spoke of one thing. This was a project thought through to the smallest detail, born of dire necessity and destined to dominate. And even on the valve covers, Ed Cole personally insisted on the elegant Chevrolet script. This was not just an engine, it was a challenge, an engineering masterpiece built for speed and glory. It was an engineer's dream, a dream that was about to collide with a harsh reality. Everything was ready. After months of a desperate race, after a billion-dollar gamble and incredible engineering feats, 1955 finally arrived. And with it, the moment of truth for Chevrolet. When the new TurboFire 265 V8 first roared to life under the hoods of the new models, America gasped. This wasn't just a motor, it was a leap into the future. The old 6-cylinder Bel Air, which took an eternal 18 seconds to reach 60, instantly became a relic. With the new V8, that time was cut nearly in half. Speed, power, prestige, everything the market craved, Chevrolet now had. It's no wonder that in its very first year of sales, nearly 1 in every 2 buyers, 43%, chose this 8-cylinder heart. In its base version, with a Rochester 2-barrel carburetor, it produced a confident 162 horsepower, available for just a $99 premium. And with the Power Pack option, which included a Carter 4-barrel and dual exhaust, the power soared to 180 horses. Chevrolet hadn't just gotten back in the game, it had blown it wide open. But the real battle unfolded not on public roads, but on the dusty, roaring tracks of NASCAR. It was a fiery dance where every turn, every overtake, wrote a new page in history. And this engineering masterpiece, the 265 V8, became an undisputed monster there. In the 1955 season alone, this engine claimed a colossal 38 victories. The names of Herb Thomas, who won 12 races in his number 92 Chevrolet, tuned by the legendary Smokey Yunick, including the prestigious Southern 500, and Buck Baker, who secured 3 wins, echoed across the country. Tim Flock, behind the wheel of a Chevrolet, snatched a stunning 18 pole positions. This small block V8 didn't just win, it dominated, laying the foundation for an epic, fierce rivalry with Ford that would define the future of American motorsport for decades. Chevrolet was ecstatic. Dealers were rubbing their hands. Engineers were accepting congratulations. It seemed the billion-dollar gamble had paid off brilliantly. But behind the scenes of this triumph, in hot garages and on pit lanes where engines were pushed to their limits, the first, barely audible notes of alarm began to sound. Through the roar of the crowd and the smell of burnt rubber, a faint but persistent whisper emerged. The whisper of mechanics who were encountering this creation, not on the drawing board, but in the harshest of realities. This engine, created with incredible speed, had several critical, deadly secrets. In their haste, in an attempt to simplify and cut costs as much as possible, Chevrolet had made a mistake that could cost them their reputation. The first problem, a true systemic time bomb, was hidden in the lubrication system. Early versions of the 265 V8 either had no oil filter at all or were equipped with only an optional bypass filter that cleaned a mere 10% of the oil. Imagine metal shavings, carbon sludge, microscopic abrasive particles, all of it circulated freely through the engine, scarring and killing it from the inside. It was a genuine suicide for the motor, a death sentence pronounced by its own creators. But that wasn't all. The pistons, designed with microscopic thermal clearances for maximum efficiency, expanded too much under intense use, especially in the hot southern states or on the racetrack. They literally rubbed against the cylinder walls, leaving deep grooves as if some invisible scraper was carving the life out of the metal. In severe cases, the piston skirts would crack and the engine would simply seize. It's no surprise that mechanics soon began to whisper about an oil-starved assassin and a scraper that were slowly but surely destroying the heart of every Chevrolet. Smokey Yunick, the sharp-witted guru of race engines, bluntly predicted that these engines wouldn't even last 30,000 miles. There were other, less obvious, but no less fatal, flaws. The lack of a positive crankcase ventilation, PCV valve in early models, a primitive breather system, and a rudimentary camshaft lubrication system that, in some areas, relied on mere splash oiling instead of pressurized delivery. Historians like Dave Emanuel would later call this engine a prototype rushed to market, and another expert, Pat Ganal, aptly noted, a brilliant engine with a dark side. Chevy bet big, but they didn't sweat the small stuff. And so, at the height of its fame, as the world applauded the new king of speed, the first cracks were already spreading across its shining crown. The triumph on the track became a harbinger of the curse under the hood. The Chevrolet small block V8 was born of necessity, genius, and desperation. It saved the company, but at what cost? Its baptism by fire left not only a trail of victories, but also scars that had yet to heal. And these scars were only the beginning of a long, painful story of redemption. We left Chevrolet at the pinnacle of its glory. Roaring crowds, the smell of burnt rubber at NASCAR, staggering sales. It seemed the billion-dollar gamble had paid off in full. But under the hood, beneath this shining crown of engineering triumph, lurked deadly secrets. The cracks that began to spread were not in the metal, but in its reputation. And they were not just minor flaws. They were time bombs, planted in haste, at the very core of this brilliant but unfinished mechanism. The most insidious of these was the lubrication system, a true oil-starved assassin. Imagine, the heart of the engine, needing the purest blood, was fed a fluid laced with abrasives. That engineering masterpiece, destined to conquer America, initially had no full-flow oil filter. In its place was only an optional bypass filter, which processed a meager 10% of the circulating fluid. The other 90%, saturated with metal shavings from break-in, carbon, and dust, raced unimpeded through the channels. Every turn of the crankshaft, every stroke of the piston, became a step toward self-destruction. Bearings were worn down to the metal. Camshaft lobes lost their profile as if they were being chewed from the inside. Smokey Yunick, the visionary of the racing world, was not wrong when he prophesied an early death for these engines, well before they reached 30,000 miles. But if oil starvation was a silent killer, the expanding pistons of doom announced their arrival with a deafening knock. These pistons, designed with minimal thermal clearances for maximum efficiency, expanded too much in hot climates or under racing loads. They literally slammed into the cylinder walls, emitting a horrifying scraping sound. Mechanics quickly dubbed this phenomenon the scuffer, as the sound resembled an invisible tool scraping the life out of the engine. With every mile, deep, scar-like grooves appeared on the cylinder walls, and the piston skirts, unable to withstand the stress, would crack. The final outcome was often fatal. An engine that had been roaring with apparent power just a minute before would suddenly seize, turning into a dead, motionless heap of metal. This trait quickly made the 265 V8 a cautionary tale, a symbol of genius undone by its own recklessness. And these were just the most glaring problems. This engine, born in such a desperate sprint, hit the market with missing fundamentals, like a hastily assembled prototype. Remember, early versions lacked a positive crankcase ventilation valve, a PCV. Its absence meant the engine's crankcase couldn't properly rid itself of harmful gases and oil vapors. And the primitive camshaft lubrication system, which in some critical areas relied on random splashing of oil instead of pressurized delivery, was another alarming sign. These small details, so easy to overlook in the frantic race against deadlines, eventually piled up, creating chronic problems. Historian Dave Emanuel aptly called the 265 V8 a prototype rush to market. And it was no exaggeration. What stood before them was a brilliant but incredibly vulnerable machine. All these miscalculations turned an engineer's dream into a true mechanic's nightmare. Every new 265 V8 that rolled out of a dealership carried the seed of a future problem. It was capable of incredible feats on the racetrack, giving the driver a sense of power and speed, but it came with an invisible price. Chevrolet's reputation, having just soared to the heavens, was now under threat. The baptism by fire on the track, which we spoke of, left not only the scars of victory, but also deep, bleeding wounds under the hood. The redemption had only just begun. We left Chevrolet on the edge of a precipice, where the whispers of mechanics about an oil-starved assassin and the scuffer could easily drown out the cheers from the NASCAR grandstands. Those same critical flaws, laid in haste, threatened to bury the company's ambitions and its engineering masterpiece. But Chevrolet became a giant, not just by creating problems, but by triumphantly solving them. This was not merely fixing mistakes, it was true redemption. In response to growing complaints and a threatened reputation, Chevrolet's engineers threw all their efforts into refinement, and by the 1956 model year, the world saw the first, but most significant, step towards perfection. A full-flow oil filtration system became standard on every small block V8. No more 10% and no more abrasive cocktail in the engine's guts. Now, the oil was completely cleaned before reaching vital components, extending the motor's life and restoring the mechanic's trust. It wasn't just a filter, it was a life raft thrown to a legendary engine. But the work didn't stop there. The baptism by fire was followed by a long, meticulous process of polishing. The engineers, led by Edward N. Cole, who had so daringly developed this engine in 15 weeks with his team of 2,900, now reevaluated every detail. They understood. The path to true greatness lies not only in speed, but also in thoroughness. It was during these years that the small block V8 began to transform, evolving from a prototype rushed to market into a paragon of reliability. Each subsequent iteration of the engine became more perfect. Its over-square design, with a bore larger than its stroke, which had previously only allowed for high RPMs, now fully realized its potential by ensuring reduced wear during long-term operation. Lightweight components, such as the hollow push rods that delivered oil directly to the rockers and valves without complex channels, and the stamped metal rocker arms developed by engineer Clayton Leach back in 1947, now not only lightened the design, but also ensured its durability. The integrated intake manifold, serving as the valley cover, not only reduced weight, but also simplified maintenance. The combustion system was also polished to a shine. Wedge-shaped combustion chambers with a large quench area prevented detonation, while the optimal placement of spark plugs in the hottest part of the chamber ensured instant and complete ignition. Add to this the fully water-jacketed ports and aluminum pistons, guaranteeing excellent heat dissipation, and you get not just a powerful, but a surprisingly resilient machine. Chevrolet did not skimp on strength. The forged steel crankshaft was the epitome of reliability, and the patented 4-point poised power engine mounting system minimized vibrations, transforming raw power into smooth, controlled motion. Every element, from the interchangeable cylinder heads that simplified production to the autothermic 3-ring pistons and press-fit wrist pins, was redesigned based on the lessons learned in 1955. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was a redesign at the genetic level. Thus, from the ashes of initial failures, a true phoenix was born. The clumsy but brilliant prototype evolved into the most successful and enduring engine in history. The compact design of the 265 V8, its innovative casting, and its scalability laid the foundation for all subsequent Chevrolet small block engines. It became the heart of countless legends, from the roaring Corvette to the iconic Camaro, from the workhorse Impala to ubiquitous pickup trucks. It didn't just change the landscape of the American auto market, it defined it for decades to come, establishing the V8 as the standard of power and freedom. This story is not just about an engine. It is an epic saga of redemption and transformation. It teaches us that the drive for innovation and speed to market, even when fraught with critical errors, can lay the groundwork for future greatness. But a true, lasting legacy is achieved only through acknowledging and correcting those mistakes, through continuous improvement and a relentless commitment to reliability. Chevrolet won its billion-dollar gamble, but the victory was paid for not only with gold, but with sweat, engineering genius, and a painful lesson. Only perfection gives birth to a true legend. And this timeless lesson still resonates under the hood of every car, a reminder that even the greatest triumphs begin with confronting one's deadliest secrets. The saga of the Chevrolet small block V8 is more than a story of metal and RPMs. It is a timeless allegory of human ambition, of a headlong leap into the future, and of the profound lessons learned from the very heart of mistakes. It shows that true greatness is not born perfect, but is forged in the crucible of challenges, where initial triumph often conceals fatal flaws, and a lasting legacy depends on the courage to acknowledge and correct them. So, what do you think truly defines innovation? The breathtaking speed of its arrival, or the painstaking, arduous work of its perfection? Share your thoughts in the comments. Is the story of the small block a warning or an inspiration? Subscribe to our channel to dive deeper into the philosophy of technology and the human spirit, and support us with a like if this journey resonated with your soul.